February 20th, 1943, north of the Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. The battle report would never completely capture what the German tank commanders witnessed that morning. American Sherman tanks performing maneuvers that seemed to contradict everything Wehrmacht doctrine claimed was possible without visual signals. Through the dust and smoke of the North African battlefield, 5 Sherman tanks, separated by uneven terrain with no line of sight between them, advanced toward German positions with timing that appeared almost supernatural. No flags, no flares, no dispatch riders racing between vehicles. Yet they moved like a single organism, each tank protecting blind spots the others could not see. Every crew knowing precisely where their comrades were positioned. Inside German Panzer IVs equipped with FUG-5 radios, tank commanders struggled just to hear their own company leaders through static that overwhelmed their amplitude modulation systems. The 10-watt German transmitters, considered advanced by 1930 standards, could barely reach more than a few hundred meters while tanks were moving. Most German tanks carried only receivers, unable to report what they observed or call for assistance. The Americans were operating with technology the Germans did not even realize existed. Frequency modulation radios installed in every single tank, crystal-controlled precision, 25 watts of transmission power, and clarity that sliced through engine noise and battlefield chaos like a knife through paper. 8,000 miles from Detroit's assembly lines, the most decisive technological advantage of World War II was beginning to reveal itself. Not in armor thickness or gun caliber, but in the invisible electromagnetic waves linking every American tank crew in ways the Wehrmacht had never imagined possible. The transformation began on July 22, 1941, when the United States Army standardized the Signal Corps radio sets SCR-508, SCR-528, and SCR-538 for all medium tanks. While German forces pushed into the Soviet Union using tactics that relied on radio communication between command vehicles, American engineers at the Galvin Manufacturing Company, later known as Motorola, were refining frequency modulation technology that would make German systems obsolete. The engineering team included Daniel E. Noble, who envisioned applying FM technology to military vehicles, and Henryk Magnuski, the principal RF engineer who solved the technical challenges of installing sophisticated electronics inside the brutal environment of a tank. Their creation weighed 181 pounds and turned every Sherman tank into a node within the world's first battlefield communication network. The BC-604 transmitter generated 25 watts of power, 2.5 times the output of the German FUG-5. Operating in the 20.0 to 27.9 MHz frequency range, it offered 10 preset channels with crystal-controlled stability. The dual BC-603 receivers in the SE-508 allowed commanders to monitor multiple frequencies at the same time, a capability that would prove decisive in combat. The real revolution lay in frequency modulation itself. Edwin Armstrong's FM technology, licensed to the military, removed the static and interference that plagued amplitude modulation systems. While German tank radios picked up every electrical discharge as noise, American FM radios delivered clear voice communication even during artillery barrages. On November 8, 1942, Operation Torch brought American armor to North Africa. Tanks of the 2nd Armored Division landed near Safi and Fadala carrying SE-508 radios that would soon demonstrate their clear superiority over German communications. The Afrika Korps, despite being the Wehrmacht's most experienced armored force, operated under serious communication limitations. A standard German tank platoon of 5 vehicles usually included only 1 or 2 equipped with full FUG-5 transceivers capable of both transmitting and receiving. The remaining tanks carried FUG-2 receivers only. They could listen to orders but had no ability to respond or report enemy positions. German tank platoons functioned through strict hierarchy. The platoon leader transmitted commands that subordinate tanks acknowledged through actions rather than words. When command tanks were destroyed, easily identified by their multiple antennas, the entire platoon often lost coordination. This weakness would prove catastrophic against American forces, where every tank could assume command functions. The Battle of Kasserine Pass, fought from February 14 to 24, 1943, provided the first major demonstration of American radio superiority. Although tactically a German victory, the battle exposed capabilities that shocked Wehrmacht observers. During the chaotic fighting, scattered elements of the U.S. 1st Armored Division maintained coordination across nearly 50 miles of battlefield. Tank crews who had never met before coordinated attacks, warned one another of threats, and called for artillery support through crystal-clear FM communications. German signals intelligence units intercepted American transmissions and noted their remarkable clarity and coordination. The intelligence section of the 10th Panzer Division reported that American units maintained communication at ranges where German radios produced nothing but static. Even more disturbing was the realization that every American tank appeared capable of full transmission, not just command vehicles. The German FUG-5 radios, operating with amplitude modulation in the 27.0 to 33.3 MHz range, suffered from fundamental limitations. Their 10-watt transmitters struggled to reach 2 to 3 kilometers under ideal conditions, often dropping to only a few hundred meters while vehicles were moving. Every spark plug firing, every electric motor, and every movement of the tracks generated interference that AM systems could not filter out. In September 1943, American armor arrived in Italy, where the mountainous terrain should have neutralized radio advantages. Instead, FM technology proved even more valuable under conditions that rendered German AM radios nearly useless. The SCR 508's frequency modulation handled the multipath interference of mountain valleys far better than amplitude modulation. American tanks coordinated movements through terrain where visual signals were impossible and German radios frequently failed, particularly during the advance toward Cassino. American armored units demonstrated abilities that defied German expectations. Tank platoons separated by ridgelines coordinated attacks with a precision that German doctrine insisted required direct visual contact. After-action reports from the 1st Armored Division described routine coordination at distances where German radios produced only static. Then came June 6, 1944. As Sherman tanks rolled off landing craft onto the beaches of Normandy, their SCR 508 radios maintained communication with naval gunfire support, coordination impossible with German equipment. But the brutal hedgerow fighting revealed a critical gap. Tank radios could not communicate with infantry radios operating on different frequencies. The infantry's SCR 300 worked on 40.0 to 48.0 MHz, incompatible with the tank's 20.0 to 27.9 MHz range. This communication gap proved deadly in the bocage, where German infantry armed with Panzerfausts could approach American tanks while nearby American infantry had no way to warn them. American innovations solved the problem within weeks. Tank crews mounted 8 field telephones inside ammunition boxes welded to the exterior of their tanks, wired directly into the internal communication system. By Operation Cobra in late July, this simple modification completely transformed tank infantry cooperation. July 25 to 30, 1944. Operation Cobra demonstrated the full potential of American radio superiority. The 2nd Armored Division, commanded by Major General Edward H. Brooks, coordinated more than 200 Sherman tanks through radio networks that allowed unprecedented battlefield control. German defenders from the Panzer Lehr Division faced an enemy that seemed to possess almost supernatural awareness. American tanks reacted instantly to threats reported by other units miles away. Artillery strikes coordinated through tank radios arrived within minutes after targets were identified. The contrast with German capabilities was dramatic. Panzer Lehr, once Germany's premier armored division, had been reduced to communication poverty. Many tanks operated without radios at all, relying on visual signals in terrain where visibility rarely exceeded 100 meters. The few radios that remained functional suffered from interference and extremely limited range, preventing effective coordination. The irony was profound. Germany had once pioneered the use of radios in armored warfare. Heinz Guderian, the architect of Blitzkrieg, had insisted on radio equipment in tanks since the 1920s. His book Achtung Panzer, published in 1937, emphasized communication as essential for armored operations. Guderian had developed radio communication systems that allowed tank officers to coordinate attacks rapidly. He understood that fast armored advances required reliable communication. Yet by 1943, German tank production could no longer supply the radios that Guderian's own doctrine required. German production statistics revealed the crisis. In 1943, Germany manufactured approximately 5,700 medium tanks, but fewer than 2,000 FUG transceivers. Many of those radios were assigned to command vehicles and assault guns, leaving regular tank units desperately short of communication equipment. Soviet tank forces suffered from even worse communication shortages. The T-34, despite being the most produced Allied tank, usually entered combat without any radio equipment. Soviet doctrine depended on flag signals and pre-battle planning, which had catastrophic consequences when facing German forces in 1941. By 1943, Lend-Lease aid provided some improvement. American radios, including SCR 508 sets, were installed in Soviet command tanks. But even by the end of the war, only about 25% of Soviet tanks carried radios. The comparison highlighted the scale of the American achievement. While the Soviet Union struggled to equip 1/4 of its tanks with any radios, the United States achieved 100% deployment of advanced FM communication systems. Motorola's Chicago factory represented American industrial mobilization at its peak. Before the war, the company produced car radios. Converting to military production required complete retooling and solving unprecedented technical challenges. Each SCR 508 required 2,748 individual components, manufactured to extremely precise standards. The BC-604 transmitter alone contained 474 capacitors and 385 resistors. Crystal oscillators had to maintain frequency stability despite extreme temperatures and violent combat vibrations. Production statistics told the story of American industrial power. 1942, 3,800 SE-508 family radios 1943, 11,400 units 1944, 24,000 units. Total wartime production exceeded 50,000 tank radio sets. This extraordinary production achievement ensured that all American armored units could operate with reliable communication networks on the battlefield. 49,324 Sherman tanks manufactured during the war were equipped with advanced radio systems, an achievement no other nation came close to matching. The SCR 508's advantages extended far beyond simple frequency modulation. Crystal-controlled frequency stability allowed tanks to preset channels before battle and remain perfectly aligned even under combat conditions. German FUG-5 radios, which relied on variable capacitor tuning, constantly drifted off frequency. The dual receiver configuration allowed commanders to monitor both their platoon network and the company command net at the same time. Orders flowed instantly down the chain of command while commanders stayed aware of the situations facing subordinate units. The BC-606 intercom system integrated smoothly with the radio, enabling every crew member to warn the commander about threats. Throat microphones and noise-canceling headphones allowed clear communication even in the middle of battle. Many German tanks lacked intercom systems entirely, forcing crews to communicate through touch or by shouting over the noise of the engine and gunfire. Power management provided another American advantage. The SCR 508 could operate on either 12 or 24 volts, automatically adapting to the available power supply. The dynamotor power unit produced stable, filtered electricity that eliminated electrical interference. German radios, powered directly from vehicle electrical systems, picked up every spark as static. The tactical benefits of universal radio deployment transformed American armor doctrine. The combat command structure, flexible task forces organized for specific missions, depended completely on reliable communications. American commanders could assemble ad hoc battle groups from different units, confident they could coordinate through compatible radio systems. This flexibility confused German commanders who were accustomed to rigid organizational structures created by their limited communication capabilities. During the Battle of Erricourt in September 1944, the 4th Armored Division confronted several German Panzer brigades equipped with the more powerful Panther tanks. The Germans held clear advantages in armor protection and gun power, yet American radio coordination proved decisive. Every Sherman tank could report enemy positions instantly. Tank destroyers received targeting information from tanks they could not even see. Artillery observers inside Sherman command tanks called in devastating barrages within minutes. Over the course of 3 weeks, the 4th Armored Division destroyed 281 German armored vehicles while losing only 41 Shermans, achieving a 7-to-1 kill ratio that completely contradicted the technical specifications of the vehicles involved. Throughout the war, German intelligence never fully understood the significance of American communication superiority. Combat reports mentioned the coordination of American units but attributed it to training rather than technology. A captured September 1944 intelligence report stated, "American tank units demonstrate good radio discipline and coordination. This appears to result from extensive training and rigid communication procedures." The report completely overlooked the technological advantage. German tactics never adapted to American capabilities. They continued targeting supposed command tanks based on antenna configurations, unaware that every Sherman could coordinate battlefield responses. German forces also planned ambushes under the assumption that American tanks would lose coordination once separated. They did not realize that constant radio communication allowed American units to maintain cohesion even without visual contact. March 1945. As American forces approached the Rhine, their communications superiority reached its peak. The capture of the Remagen Bridge demonstrated the incredible speed of American command and control. When the 9th Armored Division discovered the Ludendorff Bridge still intact, and radio reports reached 1st Army headquarters within minutes. Within an hour, divisions across the entire front were shifting to exploit the opportunity. German forces, dependent on telephone lines that American aircraft had systematically destroyed, could not respond with comparable speed. American radio coordination created a powerful defense of the bridgehead. Tank platoons from different battalions integrated smoothly, coordinating their fire through radio networks. German counterattacks, poorly coordinated because of communication failures, arrived piecemeal and were destroyed one by one. April 1945. The encirclement of the Ruhr pocket demonstrated the ultimate expression of American communication superiority. American armored columns from the 1st and 9th Armies coordinated a complex double envelopment entirely through radio communications. Inside the pocket, 325,000 German troops found themselves trapped, partly because their communications had collapsed. American fighter bombers, guided by radio-equipped forward air controllers, systematically destroyed German communication nodes. Wehrmacht units lost contact with higher headquarters and with one another. Field Marshal Walter Model's final messages before communications failed revealed the German situation. No contact with adjacent units. No communication with higher headquarters. Fighting continues, but coordination impossible. American radio superiority also deeply influenced the psychological experience of tank warfare. American crews fought knowing they were never truly alone. Even when physically isolated, they remained connected through radio waves. German tank crews experienced the opposite, a profound sense of isolation. Unable to communicate, they often fought individual battles within larger engagements. Otto Carius, one of Germany's most successful tank commanders, described the challenges of limited communication in his memoir Tigers in the Mud, although he focused more on tactical difficulties than on the communication gap itself. The strategic implications extended far beyond individual battles. American advances in 1944 and 1945 maintained their speed partly because of radio coordination that German forces could not match. The Third Army's race across France relied on radio networks that maintained command and control across hundreds of miles. German commanders consistently underestimated American capabilities because they could not fully comprehend the communication superiority the Americans possessed. Heinz Guderian, in his role as Inspector General of Armored Troops, recognized the problem but could not solve it. In a December 1944 memorandum, He acknowledged that American coordination neutralized German advantages in tank quality. After Germany's surrender, American technical intelligence teams examined captured German equipment. Their findings confirmed what battlefield experience had already suggested. German tanks often possessed stronger armor and more powerful guns, but their communication systems were catastrophically inferior. U.S. Army Technical Intelligence Report Number 176 concluded, German tank communications equipment was approximately 5 years behind American systems. The absence of frequency modulation, limited radio distribution, and poor electrical suppression created critical vulnerabilities. Soviet evaluators reached similar conclusions. The Red Army, after examining captured German equipment, chose to copy American radio designs rather than German systems for its post-war development. Production and deployment statistics. Production and deployment statistics reveal the scale of the American achievement. American radio production, SCR 508, SCR 528, and SCR 538 radios produced, 50,000 plus unit Sherman tanks produced, 49,324 units radio deployment rate, 100% transmission power, 25 watts frequency stability, crystal-controlled plus or minus 0.01% range while moving, 7 miles range while stationary, 10 to 15 miles. German radio production, FUG-5 transceivers produced, approximately 6,000 units medium and heavy tanks produced, approximately 12,000 units full transceiver deployment rate, approximately 20% transmission power, 10 watts frequency stability, variable plus or minus 1% range while moving, 0.5 to 1 mile range while stationary, 2 to 3 miles. Communication effectiveness. Average time for an American artillery fire mission, 3 to 5 minutes. Average time for a German fire mission, 15 to 30 minutes. American tanks achieving coordination, 100% German tanks with full communication capability, 20%. The radio superiority of the Sherman tank established principles that still shape armored warfare today. Modern main battle tanks carry communication systems whose lineage can be traced directly to the SCR 508, digital rather than analog, but still based on universal deployment and reliable coordination. The German Bundeswehr, rebuilt during the 1950s, prioritized communications based on the lessons of World War II. Every Leopard tank produced has carried comprehensive radio systems. A Bundeswehr training manual states clearly, the defeat of superior German tanks by inferior American vehicles with superior radios teaches that information dominance outweighs platform superiority. Modern conflicts continue to confirm this lesson. In the 1991 Gulf War, coalition forces with superior communications destroyed Iraqi units equipped with individually powerful Soviet-designed tanks but inferior radios. In 2003, American forces again demonstrated that network-centric warfare defeats platform-centric warfare. The story of American Sherman tank radio superiority represents a victory in the electromagnetic spectrum, a victory that proved more decisive than advantages in armor or firepower. German tank crews fought much of the war partially blind to this revolution, discovering too late that every Sherman tank was not simply a fighting vehicle but a node in history's first battlefield network. The SCR 508 radio transformed the M4 Sherman from an adequate medium tank into a component of a larger weapons system that included every other American tank on the battlefield. This transformation proved more decisive than any improvement in armor or firepower could have achieved. Every Sherman tank carried the tools of victory, not only in its 75mm gun or sloped armor, but in the 181 pounds of radio equipment that connected its crew to every other American tank crew. That connection created a form of collective intelligence that no individual German tank, regardless of its superiority in armor or firepower, could match. German forces discovered this reality through harsh experience. At Kasserine Pass, in the mountains of Italy, across the hedgerows of France, and during the final battles inside Germany. American tanks repeatedly demonstrated coordination that German doctrine insisted was impossible without visual contact. The Wehrmacht never developed an effective counter because it never fully understood the technological gap. A comment attributed to Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel at Germany's surrender captured this truth. whether historically accurate or apocryphal. We knew how to build better tanks, but you knew how to make them work together. America had built not just 49,324 tanks, Sherman tanks, but 49,324 nodes in the world's first armored battlefield network. The revolution in military affairs that historians now associate with modern network-centric warfare actually began in 1942, when the first Sherman tank equipped with an SCR-508 radio entered combat. From that moment forward, warfare changed permanently. The side with superior communications would defeat the side with superior weapons. The network would overcome the platform, and the connected would prevail over the isolated. This transformation occurred largely unseen by German forces. They recognized American tactical effectiveness, but they failed to identify the technological foundation behind it until far too late. By the time German commanders realized that every Sherman tank possessed communication capabilities that most German tanks lacked, the war had effectively already been decided. The German military's failure to recognize and adapt to American communication superiority remains one of the major intelligence failures of World War II. Despite repeated battlefield encounters that demonstrated American coordination advantages, German leadership never prioritized solving their critical communication weakness. They continued producing technically superior tanks that fought as isolated machines, while American forces fielded adequate tanks that fought as coordinated teams. In the end, the electromagnetic waves carried by SCR-508 radios proved more powerful than the armor-piercing shells fired from German 88mm guns. The ability to coordinate, to share information instantly, and to fight as a unified force rather than as separate vehicles. This invisible advantage determined victory more reliably than any visible superiority in armor or armament. The radio superiority of the Sherman tank changed warfare permanently, establishing the principle that in modern combat connection equals survival and isolation equals defeat. German troops learned this reality on battlefields across 3 continents, discovering too late that the Americans possessed not only numerical superiority but also technological superiority in the dimension that mattered most: the ability to fight as one unified force.